Hello, we are live. Welcome in, come on in. Go ahead and get yourself situated. So a little bit of housekeeping. You're going to be able to see me on screen and obviously my slides. Over on your right-hand side, most likely, there is a chat area, and I would love for you to drop into the chat, kind of where you're from, say hello. I love it when the chat is busy. It helps me kind of know like what everybody's learning or what questions you might have. So how this is going to work, we are going to be together for the next 50 minutes or so. And I am going to run through the things that I evaluate first before buying a property management company. And we will talk about that. Go ahead and put questions in the chat. I will address them toward the end of this. So I love questions. I love it when the chat is busy. And well, let's go ahead and dive right in. So I'm Stacey Salyer, but I go by the Slayer. My friends call me the Slayer. So I always say whenever we've met like through speaking or online, you're now my friend. So when you see me in person, you can call me the Slayer. And like I said, today we're going to spend the next 50 minutes. I'm going to give you the exact framework that I use to decide whether to buy a property management company, like if it's worth buying. But more than the framework, I want you to leave today seeing yourself differently. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. So let me show you the bigger picture first. All right, so we have our 90-day roadmap. And so most acquisitions can actually happen in about 90 days, which is 1 quarter. And I'm just going to give you this high level here of, the basics. So you have the first conversation, which is, what I call like swiping right. You're like, okay, yes, first conversation, you want to move to due diligence, structuring the deal, and closing. So that, of course, is the very, very high level 50,000 foot view of what 90-day roadmap could look like for acquiring a property management company. But before we go through that, I'm going to dive into 6 questions or 6 things that I like to evaluate before we even move into that due diligence piece. So now, those of you that are curious about acquiring, I'd love to know in the chat kind of what brought you here today. If it's something that you've been thinking about doing, buying another property management company, or just buying a property management company, maybe you don't own one yet, or if you've already acquired, go ahead and put into the chat like, yes, I've acquired, or I'm just curious, or I've always wanted to do it, but I only see like random questions on Facebook. So I like to say the next 6 questions that I go through, or the next 6 things, is the real questions before you hire a CPA. So generally on Facebook, you'll see questions like, hey, I have an opportunity to buy this 200-door company. How much should I pay? Well, that's really not the right question and not something you want to jump into right away. So let's start with question number 1. And that is owner dependency. So when you're evaluating a property management company, you really want to take a look at where the owner stands in their business. And why this matters is, you want to see like how dependent are they on, or how dependent is the business on the owner? Is the owner in the middle of every single thing? Are they, are they still managing? Are they still a property manager? Maybe they're doing the biz dev for their company, whatever that is. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a no-go, but you need to be aware of like how dependent the business is on the owner, because this can play into quite a few different factors as far as like transitioning, how involved you might need to be in the transition, how involved you might need to be in the business. Are you going to need to replace that owner? And then taking a look at their salary. So if they are doing all the things, how much salary are they drawing? Because you're probably going to have to cover that with somebody else. Or are they actually just the owner and not, doing the day-to-day? So taking a look at that. Number 2 is cash flow clarity. So you really want to take a look at where their cash is coming from and how much cash flow they really have. Now, certainly there's a lot of different strategies to buying a business. You can buy what I call like an A+ business that is fee maxed and is, a great business and you're gonna be making a ton of money. Or you could possibly find what I affectionately call a boomer business. And generally, they're not as fee max. They might have like a monthly management fee and a lease up fee, but you can kind of see the difference between the cash flows. And what are they actually really netting, and taking a look, like diving into the actual numbers and really diving deep into their financials so that you really are very clear on the actual cash flow. So number 3, hidden expenses. Now, generally, most expenses really aren't hidden, but you do want to take a look at the expenses. So again, it kind of goes back to even taking a look at that owner dependency. So if the owner is in the middle of everything, they may have some additional expenses that you may or may not need, but taking a look at where everything lands for that. So if you already own a property management company, and let's say you have your Appfolio, for example, you may not have to pay for their Appfolio or Buildium or Rentvine or whatever they're using. So you can just absorb some of the costs. The other things to look at is, and most of us business owners do this, is we'll run things through our business that only really we need, right? Like vehicles, maybe like health insurance or other things like that, and paying for things like that. So taking a look at all those and really diving deep and asking those questions of, hey, tell me more about this expense. Tell me more about this. Like, what are you getting for this? Like, and really analyzing, making sure that is that something that you're going to need? Okay, so don't forget, pop in the chat. For those of you who have just jumped in, ask questions. If you have any questions, put them in there and I'll address them toward the end. Okay, so number 4 is client concentration. Now, this one is really important, and I have some stories. So, for example, I had Patrick Hurley on my podcast. Kind of when I launched my podcast earlier this year, I had him on, and he talked about his first acquisition. And he had said that when he bought his first acquisition, he did not do a clawback. And I'll explain what a clawback is here in just a few minutes. But he had, when he bought that acquisition, there was a client that owned 40 doors, which that's great. A lot of us like those bigger clients, right? Because we think they're kind of easier to manage and all that kind of good stuff. But the day that he closed on that acquisition, that client came into the office. And you know what the client said? He was like, I don't know you. So I'm taking my 40 doors and I'm leaving. And he did not have a clawback. And that was 40 doors, 40, doors of revenue that walked out on day one. So when you're evaluating a property management book of business, it's really important that you're viewing it from the eyes of the buyer. So now when you own the business and you're managing for your larger clients, you're probably thinking like, oh, hey, this is awesome. This makes a lot of sense for me. It's a lot easier. I only have like 5 clients and they all have, 40 doors each. That may seem like a good thing, but when you're looking at it in the eyes of the buyer, that's not necessarily a good thing. And again, it's not a no-go, but it's really important that you go into it understanding that if one of those clients left, and let's say they had 40 doors, that makes a huge difference in your revenue that you're going to be getting. So kind of a side caveat to that, a clawback, for those of you that are unfamiliar with that term, is basically a something you put into your agreement, just stating like, hey, if this particular, if any doors leave between, the first month and the 6th month, you basically don't have to pay for those. So it is important, side note, to make sure that you have a good clawback. But again, the client concentration, taking a look at that in the beginning is really important. So again, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. I would love to know what's on your mind. Okay. Next is team structure. So this kind of goes with the first one that we talked about too, is how involved is the owner? And then what does the team look like? So one thing to keep in mind, let's say the owner is not super involved. Let's say the owner is actually kind of owning and running the business kind of more like a CEO. But with that, they have a team. So diving into the team is really important as well, because generally they're going to have a key person on their team that is really running the things. And it's really important that you're taking a look at that as well. Like, who's actually running it? You could have, that key person. Are they planning on staying? Are they going to fit in your team culture? Like, what does your culture look like? What does the company culture look like that you're going to be buying? That's a big deal. And then on top of that is, when you're looking at the team structure, how are they structured? So if you're running purely pod style, for example, and you're buying a portfolio style run business, and I'll explain kind of the differences here in a second, those don't really mesh. So what is the plan in order to get them to mesh? Is the team that is running that one that you're buying now, will that mesh with your current team or will it not? So those of you that have been in property management for a while probably are very familiar with the different terms like portfolio, departmental, and pod. So pod technically is usually for those larger companies where they're going to have a property manager, assistant PM, and a maintenance coordinator. And then they're going to have maybe some other departmental type stuff. Portfolio style is generally where it's one property manager and they do all the things for a number of doors. So, it's really important that you're looking at team structure and you're looking at documentation, what kind of tech stack are they using? Again, can they operate without the owner? Is the owner part of the team? Is the owner the one that's the operations manager? Is the owner the one that's the property manager? And then keeping in mind too, those relationships that those teams have built with the current clients. So there's a lot to look at when you're looking at a company. It's not just, dollars and cents. You should be looking at it kind of holistically as well. So, all right. And then the last one that we want to talk about is the contract lock-in. So contracts, as far as the contracts with the clients, what did those contracts look like and what did they say? So now, again, I'm not an attorney or CPA, so I've put that disclaimer on my slides. But at a high level, you do need to know kind of your area and what the regulations are. For example, I know just in talking with other people that Texas, from what I understand, you cannot really assign contracts. Now in other states you can, but that, is just kind of looking at the contract. So number one, are they assignable? Number two, what are the terms of the contract look like? Are they month to month? Is it something that you can easily kind of get them into your contract? What does it look like, what they're paying? Like who's locked into the contract? Who can walk out the door? What does that look like? Because you're essentially buying income, but you are buying those contracts. So it's really important that you're really taking a look at all of that and making sure that you're, kind of diving deep into the actual contracts themselves. Okay, so we kind of reviewed all 6 of those specifics. And like I said, if you have questions specifically on those, I would love to hear them. And I will address them at the end. And I wanted to kind of move into, so beyond just looking at those 6 key things that you want to take a look at when you're evaluating a company, that is really important, of course. But I kind of wanted to address the operator versus acquirer mindset. So in property management, we have really 2 types of people. We have the operators and the acquirers. And operators, like I was one once many years ago when I opened my own company. From my living room, I was single mom of 3 and I was grinding. I was working door by door. I was, doing all the networking events and everything like that. And then once I acquired my first company in my market, I really had that aha moment where I shifted my mindset and I was like, wait a minute, I'm not just an operator, I'm now an acquirer. And really the difference between the two has nothing to do with skill or luck or even money. Because I'll even tell you when I did acquire that large company, it was 370 doors in 2020, the start of COVID. I was still a single mom of 3 and I really did not have a lot of money. So really it's not about luck, it's not about money. It's really about the way you see opportunity and the way you see yourself. So I do want to talk about something that nobody in the industry really says out loud, at least until now. And this is kind of where a lot of our companies are, right? And again, this is where I was. And it's the trap that really we haven't addressed, where we are working, super hard every month. And like, for example, let's say last month you signed 3 new owners. And you should feel proud. You should feel proud that you brought in those 3 new owners. But instead you feel kind of tired. And it's just kind of every month it's that same grind of, gosh, I hope I bring in, 6 new clients, but then next month, 2 give notice, they have to sell their homes or whatever. And so it's just that continual like hamster wheel of growth. So we really haven't talked about what it really feels like to be an acquirer. And then, within that, when you're in that daily grind, you're in the daily grind. You're the first one into your office. You're the last one out. You're the one who fixes things when they break, as far as like, maybe your IT. I know I used to be way back in the day. You're the one that you're saying yes when you should be saying no. But, it means that you're going to do it anyway. And then somewhere deep down, there is a quieter voice inside of you and asking yourself, like, is this it? Like, is this what I built? And this is it? Like, I'm just going to keep grinding on that hamster wheel. So I really today wanted to take the opportunity to talk about that voice. And if you've heard that voice, I want you to know something. That voice is not weakness, but it's really the operator trap talking. And it doesn't get fixed by just keeping on that hamster wheel of growth. So I wanted to also talk about like what do acquirers do differently? So obviously we kind of just talked about the operators and the daily grind. I'm sure most of you have felt it. I would love to know in the chat, like go ahead and drop in if this feels like it's resonating with you, like if you're like, yes, I feel like I am on that daily hamster wheel of growth and I'm kind of stressed out every single month. And, I've set my goals for the year and I'm like, I just can't, like, it's just like that continual hamster wheel. Feel free to drop in. Okay, yes. So I see Lori and Arissa. So yes, you feel it. And that's really what I wanted to talk about as well. So it's not just about like what you're evaluating as far as a company, but really evaluating yourself. So what do acquirers do differently? Well, operators, like, the day-by-day growth is like, how do I get more? But acquirers ask completely different question. So the acquirers ask, what's already built that I can own? And I know it sounds super simple because really it is, but it's kind of one of those things when you finally give yourself permission to really think bigger, you're like, oh, okay, that's right. Like I can go out and acquire, I can be an acquirer as well. And it's really the one question that changes your whole outlook on what you're doing. And it's really who you become. So you stop competing with the operator down the street for the same 12 owners, because we all know there's only a certain amount of, people that want their homes professionally managed. And instead you start looking at their business for one that you could maybe buy one day. So with this, I would love to do a little exercise, and you don't have to close your eyes, but if you'd like to, you can. I would love for you to think about what your life would look like 12 months from now. So let's say you take the leap, you declare you're an acquirer, and you close your eyes and you think, okay, what would my life actually look like 12 months from now. This is really kind of more that transformation. So what are we in? April 2027. You go from operator to acquirer, and you're not really the person trying to prove you can scale anymore. You're the person who already did. And so think about that. So you stop apologizing for wanting more, because it's okay to want more, and it's okay to want to be bigger, and it's okay to, become an acquirer. You stop explaining yourself to people like who choose smaller, and you start walking different. You walk into rooms differently. You walk into NARPM conferences differently. Maybe you're invited to speak on stage about how you acquired 2 companies in your market and what you did different in order to do that. Maybe you're invited onto my podcast to share your story. I would love to have you on. And you start answering the question differently, like, what do you do? So instead of what do you do, when you're in the daily grind, you're like, oh, well, I'm basically a babysitter. I'm a police officer. I'm a therapist. Instead, the what do you do answer is, well, I'm an acquirer. I acquire companies. That's what I do. And think of how that would make you feel, like how your future self will feel in April 2027. So you stop grinding for doors. This isn't really a business change. I think I really want to highlight that. It's really an identity shift. And once you make it, you really don't go back. So I'd love to show you what it would look like in a real deal. Now, mind you, these are, just basic numbers. But I would love to know also in the chat kind of who just kind of did the 12-month go ahead, like look forward. And what did you see? Like, what did you see in yourself? Like, if you feel like you want to put something in the chat as far as like, where did you see yourself? What did it look like for you? I would love to know. So go ahead and add that in. And then let's take a look at what one acquisition could do for you numbers wise. So we'll talk about the numbers, but then we'll also talk about what that could look like for you just personally. So one deal can change everything. Now, again, these are very rough numbers. It's what I call napkin math. But let's say, for example, 300 doors can easily bring in an additional $300,000 to $400,000 in gross revenue in year 1. Now, again, this is gross revenue, but again, that can change your life. That can change your business. It can change your community. It can change your employees' lives. And it's not just about the money, because that's really just the proof that it works. But this is what happens when most people work with me. They're positioned to do this within the next 12 months. But really, like I said, the money is not the transformation. The money is the proof. And the proof that you weren't stuck and you were just playing the wrong game. And so again, there's nothing wrong with anybody here as far as like the door by door growth. In fact, you should keep that funnel, but we should be adding the additional funnel on of acquiring as well within your market. And that, proof that the person that acquires a company is the same person who's been building one for years. You just stopped grinding and started thinking like an acquirer. So really the question isn't, if you can afford this or afford to do this, or if it's, it's really, the question really for everybody is kind of more like, can you afford to keep being in the same cycle when you feel like you've outgrown it? So I'd love to, again, put stuff in the chat if you feel like you have outgrown kind of yourself and you're like, oh, I want to, kind of move into something different. So I would love to know. I hope you're feeling kind of what I'm, describing. And you've probably been asking yourself the same question that everyone asks at some point. So, all right. All right. Yeah. So I see in the chat, definitely, I feel like there's some good growth goals and all that. So it seems like it's resonating as far as like what everybody feels like as well. So that's great. And I love that because it it really is kind of once you open your mind to, oh yeah, this is a whole nother funnel and I can grow myself and grow my business. That's what we're talking about as well. So where do you go from here? And, this is a great question. So where do I go from here? Okay. So Stacey, I attended your masterclass today. I learned, 6 basic items to look at, like when I'm evaluating a company. I understand now that yes, the multiples are important, but the multiples are like later in the dating. First we got to look at those, 6 main things, and of course things beyond that. But where do I go from here? So I've transformed my mindset as far as like, hey, I'm not just an operator, I want to be an acquirer. But specifically, what is the actual next step? So today is Wednesday. You're here with me in this masterclass. We're on the Demio platform. And I'm just curious, what does Monday morning look like for you, right? So you're here, you're excited, you've already envisioned what your life looks like in April 2027. Because here's the trap. We're going to get off the masterclass. You're going to be super excited, but you're going to close your laptop, or you're going to, go walk away and have an afternoon coffee or whatever. And life is going to come right back at you. The tenant's going to call because the water heater blew up at, 4:58 p.m. And now you have to scramble, try and find a plumber and, coach them through how to turn off the water. You're going to have that owner finally call you back after you've been playing phone tag, and all that kind of good stuff. Emails are going to come in. Your team's going to come in to your office, be like, hey, I need your help. So that's what's going to happen, today and over the next couple of days. And a week from now, the moment's going to feel even further away. And 2 weeks, even further. And then a month, it's gone. And you're still kind of where you are, right? Like we're still like, yeah, I was super excited, but now it's kind of super far away. And I don't feel like it's, I'm going to be moving on anytime soon. So that will happen. I mean, because I've been there. I mean, I've gone to conferences, I've joined master classes, and I'm like all hyped up. And then I like walk out the door, and then, I have 25 emails and my hype goes away. But if you do something different today and you decide to, before you close your laptop, before we exit this amazing masterclass, you give yourself a forcing function. You put a date on the calendar and a room to walk into, and a decision that locks in what you felt today before it fades. And so I did actually build something for you specifically for that. And that is next Wednesday. So next Wednesday, I'm going live with a group of people that have decided to put the stake in the sand. And they're like, hey, I want to move from being an operator to acquirer. I want to learn more and I want to go deeper. And I want to spend 3.5 hours with Stacey online. And I want to go deep into what that really feels like. So that is what I built for next week. 1 week from today. Just put the date on the calendar, easy, lock in, and then that way you'll be live with me. It will also be recorded. So I realize if you do have to step away for any sort of time, then you can do that and you'll have the recording. But the cool thing is it will actually be like a working session. And so we'll actually be working on you and your personal development as far as like what that looks like and acquiring in your market. And I would love to have you join me because I think it will be super fun. The QR code will take you to the page, and it is $997. And that is 3.5 hours with me online, live, real time, real teaching, answering specific questions, and going deeper on that. So I would love to have you join me, and I would love to answer some of these questions. And I would love to have other questions pop in. So and I would love to know like who's joining me next Wednesday, who is going to lock in for their personal development and their life as far as like what that looks like. And join me as far as 3.5 hours. When you put the date on the calendar and the time on the calendar, it'll, you will be there. All right. So easily enough, you can easily jump in and do that. And as a fast action bonus, anybody that does register in the next 48 hours, I actually have a special thing that I'm doing. I have not done this before with anybody. Usually my one-to-one stuff is reserved for my one-to-one clients that pay me thousands of dollars a month. But I'm doing something called the Slayer Read. I love to play on my nickname. But anybody that registers in the next 48 hours, I will do a reading for you as far as your own personal reading. You'll get an intake form, you'll fill out some questions, and then I will make a video and I'll send it to you personally before we join together on the 22nd. And it basically, I'll talk about, I'll answer your questions and talk more deep into you personally and your market and everything like that. So that's for anybody that registers in the next 48 hours. So again, I'd love to have you join me. Feel free to put in the chat if you have questions specifically about the next week on Wednesday, and I will start kind of going through some of these questions here. And then as I'm answering some of these questions that have popped up, feel free to put other questions in and be happy to answer them. Okay, so, all right, let's see, I'm just going to read this one out. It has potential acquisition, 29 doors, main rent roll, management agreement and price. One woman show like me, properties fit the area and clientele. I get the sense she's not familiar with selling and the info given is limited. What kind of financial documents should I ask for? That is a very good question. So we do go deeper into that into next week. But I would recommend that you at least have an NDA signed. I'm not sure. And it looks like maybe Ron, you submitted that. So Ron, if you're still online, I would at least have an NDA. And then, I do go deeper into those very specifics in the programs that I teach as far as very specific checklists and all that kind of good stuff. Okay, so Jay, as far as your question, where should we be looking for opportunities? I've sent unsolicited letters to other PMCs in your area, suggestions. And so Jay, I've talked about this a few times on my podcast as well. So feel free to jump on to some of the different episodes, but really anywhere in your area. And I'll just kind of highlight a couple of them. I mean, obviously property management companies, but I always look at realtors that are doing property management on the side. And then just really getting connected in your market as much as you can, whether it's, even through Rotary or Kiwanis and, simple tips like that. But again, when people do work with me in my programs, we obviously go deeper into all those. And I have quite a few different checklists and good stuff that my clients get to use. So, all right. Okay. So Jeff, let's see, we definitely have a market of aging out operators, and I'd like to plan for future acquisition. We would be like a net positive 100 doors this year. So that's cool. So Jeff, if you're still on, I'm curious if you have a specific plan for that, or, what's been working for you. And Alberto, like to accelerate the vision of growing to 1,000 units in 2 years versus 10 years. So yeah, I do talk a lot about that. We'll be talking about 10xing goals next Wednesday and what that looks like and what that entails. So again, it's really about that mindset shift. And if anybody else has any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Oh, cool. Lori, thank you. Yeah. So Lori will be joining us next Wednesday, and you're at 730 doors. You have been for 3 years. Yeah, I hear that a lot. It kind of seems like people reach that 700 level and then it's like a plateau. But your goal's 1,000 doors. Oh, cool. So your goal's been 1,000 doors for the past 3 years. Okay, cool. Well, I love that. So yeah, so Lori has taken the leap to get off the hamster wheel. I need to get some sort of funny, fake hamster thing that runs some sort of meme thing. But yeah, I think And I think that's really cool. So I'd love to answer any other questions. Feel free to pop them into the chat. Otherwise, I just kind of talk into the void. But again, next Wednesday, I'll be going a lot deeper. It'll be me 3.5 hours online. You get the Slayer and my brain and my experience. And like I said, if you register in the next 48 hours, you'll get that extra bonus. And that is worth quite a bit of money and, mindset shift just in its own. So I would love to have everybody join me next Wednesday, and it would be a lot of fun. I'm trying to think of any other questions that I generally get from people, whether it's about next Wednesday or just in general, or if anybody has any other questions about the 6 things that like 6 main things to evaluate, feel free to put them into the chat, and I'm happy to answer them. But otherwise, I think that, okay. Lori, what are the benefits of attending NARPM? So Lori, I don't know if you're a NARPM member or if you're going to broker owner. Okay, you are. So I have always been involved in NARPM. I'm in Washington State, and I've been in property management. This is year 22. I joined NARPM back in, I think, 2010 or so. So the benefit for me was joining my local chapter. I know not every state has local chapters, but I got the privilege of also being the Washington State president, and I was a national ambassador when they had that program. So I think the connections is a huge benefit for sure. Is anybody in here going to NARPM Broker Owner? That is the very last week of April. I will be there. I'm actually presenting on Wednesday at 1 p.m. right after lunch. So make sure, if you're going to be there, make sure you're back in time after lunch. And I think a benefit for sure is, just the networking, meeting new people. I think for me personally, the different things that I've done, definitely, the connections as far as like even selling my company to Pure and doing all that. I probably wouldn't have had those connections if it wasn't for NARPM. So I'm a huge, huge fan. I think it's a great, great connection for sure. So any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I really do want to thank everybody for taking time out of your day to join me. I, of course, would love to see all of you next week, instead of closing the laptop and walking away and getting distracted, put a date and time on your calendar so that you can move you and yourself forward and transform your mindset. So, all right. Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining today. I really appreciate it. I will see you all again soon. All right. Thank you so much. Have a great day.